Welcome, everybody, to the Gnostic Rebellion. Today, we're speaking with Paul Miller, who runs the YouTube channel Uncivilized Rebirth, or as I saw him abbreviate it, UR, but I thought of the biblical or pre-biblical and that has a certain resonance for those interested in biblical prehistory. Paul's Gnostic exploration of who and what he is has developed into an exploration on ideation and has provided meaning, a mission to put himself into the world. We'll introduce him in a moment, but first, in the description below this video, you'll find a link to our PayPal channel, and we request that you make a donation at this time to support both this program and our historic building and historic congregation. We are the first fully owned and operating Gnostic church on the continents of the Americas, and of course, your donations are tax deductible. While you do that, we'll extend this easy blessing. May wisdom and divine providence increase the unique genius of our congregation and bring us to health, wealth, and increase of days. Okay. Paul Miller has stated, my path has been experiential rather than academic, centered on observing how identity, belief, and attention shape the inner world and how sovereignty is reclaimed internally. Paul, welcome to the Gnostic Rebellion. Please introduce yourself, and I'd like you to try to describe your idea of uncivilized rebirth.
Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. Well, my idea of uncivilized rebirth. Are you cool if I just jump into that part there?
That's what I asked you to do.
Okay.
If you don't want to say hi, I was born a lone country
Oh,
boy.
okay, I can do that.
No, I didn't want you to go there. I was being silly.
Oh, my bad.
Please don't
I'm
bore
not
our
good at
audience
social
because they don't
cues.
really care. They care about
Okay.
what you're doing now.
So, my concept of uncivilized rebirth came from when I went through a spiritual awakening and I realized that I have the power to be who I want to be from the inside out and not being programmed from the external world of this is the way you're supposed to act. This is the way you're supposed to dress. This is how you believe in God. This is how you contact with deities, and realize that I don't have to follow any man made structures. And so the civilized part is not about being proper and put together. It's about the civilian world or the world that's created for us to become a character to be a part of it. And uncivilized is like, I'm not going to be a part of that. I'm going to choose how I'm going to be, irregardless how y'all want me to be. And
Now
so
that's
basically,
a
it's like,
perfect Gnostic concept. That's if one of the attitudes, if I had to write a Gnostic attitude to have, you have it. You just expressed it perfectly. I'm going to be who I want to be, no matter what your opinion is on it, because your opinion doesn't inform me about jack shit. But isn't that
well
true?
said.
Do any of us really know what's best for anyone else?
Man, I think truly when I started doing that deep work, I realized that I need to do my best to have no expectations of anybody. And in that, it's like, no, I don't know what's best for anybody. And they deserve the freedom from my opinions, from my judgments and expectations. And in that was like doing my part for freedom. It's like, you should be who you want to be. And so, yeah,
And
I
of
don't
course,
know what's best.
interestingly enough, you might want a little bit of liberation from your own opinions and judgments.
Oh, yes. That internal voice.
Yeah, but you write being free of the outside world, memories, and our imagination feels like a magical bridge to the future. My internal awareness is no longer being distracted by external expectations, the past, and what may happen. This turning within is the key to personal sovereignty as the outside world no longer holds authority over one's ambition and self creation. Can you talk about this?
Well, so the imagination being the bridge to the future, I call that like a an anchor in the future where like an artist like sees in their mind what they want this sculpture to be. And so they see this horse and so they get their chisel and their hammer and they start doing the work. Nobody else sees the vision. Nobody else sees the horse but the artist. And so I have to use my vision to see what I want, who I want to be in the future. And then I have to daily there's this great picture of this dude. He's chiseling himself where he is the
I know that
marble.
picture. Love it.
And yeah, and it's so true. And it's painful work, but it's like, unless I envision the future of how I want it to be, and basically the only thing I control is myself, and I have to start sculpting myself to become that man and not look for anybody externally to be like, okay, how do I do this? What do I do next? Maybe there's guides along our path or my path, but I need to go in and I have to do the work if I'm going to connect with that vision in the future. Um,
Hmm.
and that's kind of the way I
You
summarize that.
Yeah. You talk about how your identity can be consciously reorganized. And here, in what you just said, you're really talking about projecting an identity that you want to have in the future, which, kind of tingles my spidey sense, so to speak. I mean, what do you know now of you? It would seem to be more important than what you might think you're going to be in the future. You know,
Well, if I don't have a target, I may not get anywhere, but I do need to have a target. But with the
okay, I'm not going to
identity,
disagree with you.
oh yeah.
You know, I'm, and maybe I'm taking what you say too much on the surface. Um, I'm thinking about my younger self when I was of an age where, I was doing rock and roll gigs with my bands. And I wanted to be Jim Morrison. I was going to save the world like Patti Smith. And, I had myself in the future projected to be that great artist. And the world didn't treat me the same way. But yet, now that I'm running this church, I'm kind of doing the same thing. And in both cases, I realized I'm always living in a world of ideas. Now I'm writing documents and creating videos and writing books and all that stuff. Then I was writing songs and pushing them out into small concert venues and that kind of thing. Um, and so I didn't see the person that, if you're going to say that I could have projected, I projected something, out there, but what I was really doing was listening to that inner voice that wanted to write the next great song, that now wants to write that next great book. Put out that idea that makes modern Gnosticism make sense.
Yeah.
Um, you write, how we hold others in our perception quietly shapes who they are allowed to become. And the same is true of how we hold ourselves. Would you speculate on how our self identity influences our perception of others and how others affect our internal sense of self?
Okay. So what I like to use is kind of the analogy of if we have been wounded by somebody and then we go through and do that healing and move on. But if we keep viewing that person, the aggressor, whoever it was, through a lens of they are guilty and they are bad, they subconsciously try to fill that role. They get defensive and they're not living in grace from us or themselves. And so they start going back into that role, that identity of being the transgressor. And that can put them back into a loop or these cycles that we repeat
Or
in our
would you
life.
say you're perceiving them as a transgressor? I mean, this is something like very common with email and social media exchange. Somebody means something as a joke, and the other person is insulted by it. Or somebody says something innocuous that they don't even realize is a trigger. And of course, that happens in our relationships with people that are close to us, right? They can say things that um, they think are innocuous, and they tip off our triggers and they fire us, you know what I'm saying? And so Jung would say that this is really a projection we're making onto them.
So it's like, so, and the way I see it too is like if I'm still viewing them as through the lens of they are bad and wrongdoers, and they perceive that, they still try to stay in that character or play that role, and they aren't really freed up. Versus if I
Yeah, you're
am
holding them
really
over there.
truly doing that healing and that inner work, I can look past their sounds, the energy output, and their body and look at their soul and see them for that child they used to be that's kind and loving. And then when they feel that, they are more free to move into that of that character that is not the aggressor and maybe change that behavior they had. And that's like really deep, difficult inner work to let go of, like wanting to be angry, but
Well,
that's the way I
you
perceive
also
that.
seem to be talking about what we would say formally is a process of recapitulation.
Oh, I don't
Uh,
know this.
we can recapitulate our experiences in memory to gain a fuller sense of self. So, I may not have noticed something about myself at the time a certain event happened in my life. But when I go back and recapitulate, I can reconstruct it. Like in psychotherapy, a lot of times you go back in your childhood memories and you re-examine them as an adult so that you stop playing that tape, that puts up your defense mechanism. But on the other side of that, Jung would say that that identity you're putting that person into is really a projection of the bad person in yourself.
Oh gosh, that the shadow work maybe that I have
Yes,
thought
it's
about
shadow
that.
work. I don't go so far as Jung personally, because he's going to turn around and say everything you hate in other people is just shit you hate in yourself, and you can't possibly see other people. I don't believe that. I think that um, people uh, uh, can see other people in themselves um, through their own identification with themselves. And I think that's something that transcends what Jung said. And one of the things that I think, and it's why we call this program what we call it, organizing the inner world is really a quiet form of rebellion, right? Because you're telling society to go, take a flying leap, and you're really after your own cause. And of course society's going to do everything to you about this. They're going to say, oh, you're being selfish and greedy. Oh, you first, huh? Me first, me first. Oh, what a narcissist. I can't know you if I don't know me. Tell me that I believe to tell you I believe in something when I don't know myself. Who's doing the believing? Knowing myself has to come first. Um, you write, and knowing ourselves is one thing, immersing in our memories. You write, memories etched in the folds of our minds are chapters that shape who we are, constantly evolving as we turn them over and reflect. Well, the Gnostic process, again, we spoke of is recapitulation, but it's also rumination, reflecting on our memories. That's what makes us different from animals. Animals have the event and they're done. We reflect on that event. And We turn them over in our minds. And so, taking the experiences in our current lives from the past, and we just got done talking about that a little bit. We open up ourselves to memories that seem not to be connected to our inner story of ourselves and find a need to recapitulate our identity. Am I demonstrating a concurrence with your own experience there?
We say we I need to will you give me the definition of capitulation? I haven't used that in a while.
Recapitulating, restating, reassembling. Taking
So
it apart, analyzing it, and putting it together as it really is. You know what I'm saying? Daddy wasn't really beating you up. He gave you a spanking because you deliberately knocked all the food off the table, right?
mm,
And so you carry this memory forth that Daddy is a dangerous person from there, which is erroneous. You get back to that memory and you can recapitulate it and you can see the whole scene happening over again. And there you are being a bad little boy and getting your just dessert. And
and
it
and there's
changes a lifelong, say, fear of men. Right? Yeah,
yeah,
I'm being over dramatic here.
yeah. But it's funny that hits home because I had to go in and do that inner work. And so like in ruminating as the word you used over my history and looking at it as a story and
Yeah.
looking at it and really doing that deep work of like, wow, so this body records everything in my life that I'm awake or alert for or associated with, as in not being disassociated. And so it's recording, and then it will use those memories as like a sheet for a player piano currently of like how to conduct myself. And when I go
Well,
in and
some of
like,
that's unconscious, right?
yeah,
You're
do you
you're
ever do
you're
something? You're like, wow, that sounded like my parent. And you're like,
yeah.
I didn't want to do that.
Well,
And
think
so
of
I
how
had to,
many trillions of memories you have. How
oh
many
man.
thousands and hundreds of thousands of data points are hitting your brain in this very moment. Okay. And so
So,
you're editing all of that because you can't think of all those things.
yeah.
So the story that you tell about your life is the edited story, and everything that's outside of that story you disregarded. But that's the unconscious. That's where the shadow lies, and it's all
But,
those forgotten memories, disregarded memories, hated memories, fearful memories, everything that you have to begin to reintegrate into your new identity, which is going to be a whole, more full self, a wholesome understanding of being.
and here's where the inner work for me was super important because I was like, I want to be somebody different. And so much of my character now is based on the programming of my memories of my life. So, how do I disconnect from that and step into a new version of myself? And
Well,
so
here's
I
what's
had to,
interesting in that. Didn't you do that as a teenager?
I don't know. I don't know. I
You
think I was just
rebelled and you started
surviving.
to want to be yourself. I mean, my mom and dad told me everything to do from the minute I woke to the minute I went to bed at night. I did my homework. I was allowed to play when I was allowed to play. Suddenly, you start to say, maybe I don't want to do my homework right now. Or maybe I'd rather play for a little bit. Or maybe when I'm out there, I'm going to go in the backyard with my buddy and we're going to play with matches.
It's like
And
autonomy.
so we start to do those things. And sometimes we do terrible, crazy things and dangerous things. Um, and it's all in a search for self. I'm trying to establish myself as an adult. And I'm not an adult yet, but I'm not a child anymore. I'm in that in between place that's so difficult to deal with. So we rebel. We have that at all points in our lives. It's always available to us. So if you're starting to wake up to a spiritual life and you're starting to tell the world to piss off. I mean, I see in most of the beginning spiritual students that I know, the first thing they do, and I did it too, the first thing they do is come to hate the world. Because the world is the place with all the stupid people, the zombies, the
Well,
not
it's like
holy people, the
waking up
people who
to a
don't know.
nightmare.
Hmm?
It's waking up to a nightmare. It's a human zoo. It's a herd. That's what humans are right now.
but
They're
it's a
herded, they're
beautiful
trained.
place too.
But
It's a
the
beautiful
nightmare
place.
is that like the humans are the most trainable species on Earth, and they have been trained to the umpteenth degree. And then when they have a problem with that, they're like beat back into like you must toe the line. That's the way I view it.
Well, that's what the world wants, right?
Yeah.
And you're naturally bucking that by saying, "I want to do what I want," because in reality, whose life is it to live? When the guy behind me wants me to drive faster, I just say to myself, is he going to pay the traffic ticket and the extra insurance points from here on in? Or if I get in an accident, he's going to give me his car? You know? So, I mean, if you listen to them, you'll be living the life they want you to live, but you won't be living your life. And
Yes.
your life is the only thing that can bring meaning. And so, the role of attention, meaning, and memory in shaping our behavior, you're tapping right into that. As a matter of fact, you write, I built something meant to serve. I saw judgment and self-doubt arise together, not as obstacles, but as parts of the inner world asking to be guided rather than cut away. So now this sounds to me like a potent formula for investigating the shadow. It gives attention that we need to those elements of ourselves that we've attempted to disown and reject. And in recapitulating the memories of flagged deeds and assumptions into greater understanding, that can be gleaned from this. It offers us a greater fullness of expression. Can you talk about how memories shape our behavior and how those memories we have not yet integrated into our being?
Okay, so the and this is what I've learned. It's like I will go into a situation that can be highly triggering that I haven't been in yet as an adult.
Okay.
But I had seen adults act in ways that responded in this situation that were not of a good nature. So then my subconscious is stepping into new territory. Then it starts miraculously scanning, okay, do I know how to act in this situation? Oh, I found a way that an adult acted in this situation. And a memory is like basically a three-dimensional set of instructions that will control your words, it will control your feelings and your identity. So in that stressful moment, all of a sudden we act in a way you're like, oh my gosh, like I said earlier, I acted like a parent that I didn't want to act like. So basically, it's a subconscious
Been there.
pulled from the cue of like, we act this way in this moment. And when I did that, I said, okay, how do I redirect the energy in my brain from accessing that old memory in a way to conduct myself now to redirecting the energy to a new codex of a new behavior that I want to embody now?
Let's
And
take
so
that even a
that's,
step further. The knee-jerk
yeah,
reflex, where
yeah.
you respond to a situation, say, you snap at somebody because some situation popped up, and really, the exact situation, there was no reason for you to snap, but unbeknownst to your conscious mind, there was an old memory back there that triggered.
Yes.
And so we can learn from our knee-jerk mistakes and we can not so much correct our behavior because correct our behavior is just wanting to socially fit in, but we can uncover that memory. We can fix the deficiency inside of us, and again, striving to make ourselves more whole, to unencumber the creative process. Now, you talk about a whole creative process in the quote that I just said because you're talking about how you're going to serve, and so you're building up a ministry now with this experiential data.
So when the best way to answer that, when I went through my spiritual awakening slash enlightenment, which I haven't quite figured out the separation of those two, but I had a full separation of my soul and my mind. And I realized that my soul is like my life, my entity, and my brain is separate. And then I realized my brain had been programmed by the outside world, and I was living a character that the world expected me to live. And I realized like I have to go in and change this character. So I created the character trigger. And in doing that, I learned a faster shortcut to program a new personality into the brain. And it's called the
Well,
character trigger.
this sounds to me like, a creative Gnostic process
Yeah.
in getting to know yourself better. Because what you're really doing is cutting off the elements in your thoughts that are not yours. And
Yes.
you're going into your pure thought. Now, I would say the soul and the mind are the same thing. The mind and the brain are two different things. You know, just kind of where I'm coming from. Not trying to lord that as some kind of fact or something.
The
Because
way I
I
see
really
the
think that
brain,
Gnostic and metaphysical speculation is just that, speculation. You and I do not have the truth, individually or collectively, but we each can get to the truth of ourselves. And as Jesus says in the Gospel of Thomas, the ancient Gnostic Gospel of Thomas, when you do come to know yourself, you will simultaneously gain knowledge of the all. You know,
I believe that's very true.
yeah.
Very true.
So, what is there to believe in but myself?
Um, that's a because people's words build the imaginations or the things in our brain. And so, how can I believe something's true unless I haven't truly experienced it or
Right.
come into my
If
experience?
I
And so,
had the most important ancient mystical secret, but you don't understand the symbolism that I'm speaking through, I can tell it to you, and you might not even hear it, or you'll gloss it over. You won't even remember that I said it because it's not reaching the point where you're ready to perceive it. And I'm not talking about because your spirit isn't qualified. I'm really just talking about. You just haven't done all the two plus twos yet. You know what I'm saying? I can't teach you algebra until you can do addition and subtraction.
I saw this really it wasn't a podcast, it was a dude on YouTube, but he was explaining why learn things. He's like, why learn about math? Why learn about let's say Gnosticism? I may say that butcher that, or why learn about these other subjects? He's like, well, when you come across a problem, you'll know how to solve it. Because if you see a math problem and you don't know math, it means nothing. So unless we have the means to dissect it and understand it, this concept or this idea means nothing and it won't land. And like
But
you
of
said, it just
course,
passes through.
any mathematician worth his salt will tell you the study of mathematics expands the consciousness, just like the study of the world's great literature, the study of the world's great philosophies, the study of history, the study of the great deeds of men and women. All of this expands our consciousness, brings us to a greater gnosis of the world. So, I think that's certainly an important thing, and really, a great way to kick this off. So, I want to thank you, Paul. And again, I know I said it to you privately before, but what a great name, Paul. Why did
Oh,
I say that?
you got one too, man.
Um, uh, but thanks for being on our podcast. I think we had not just a great discussion, but one of our best podcasts so far. So I really enjoyed it. If you would send me your links, I'm going to post the links right below the donate link on our Rumble channel, and then of course we'll get this out to the rest of um, our congregational network. So. Good
Thank
night,
you,
Paul.
sir.
Good night, everybody online. Take care and be well.